Welcome to Next Steps, a podcast from Black Hawk Church in Madison, Wisconsin, where together we'll take next steps to grow in our relationship with Christ, to be formed into the kind of people He's created us to be, and to better love and serve those around us. Let's jump in.
Well, welcome back to the Next Steps podcast. Well, I guess not really welcome back. I'm welcoming myself back. It's been a while. My name is Chris Kopp. I'm the site pastor here at Brader Way, and with me is Pastor Tiffany Malloy. Tiffany, it's been a minute since we've done this.
I feel like it's been over a year for us to be in these seats or something, so it's fun to be back. Mm-hmm.
Feels good. I feel a little rusty, but hopefully it'll be good. And then joining us, as promised, is Pastor Chris Dolson. Chris, how are you doing today?
I'm great.
Good. You get to talk about Revelation for the next 11 weeks, so you're pretty excited about that.
I'm nervous about the podcast because I could talk all day long about this. So, anyway.
So good.
Absolutely. All right. Well, we're having this conversation kind of assuming that you have listened to Chris's message on Sunday that kicked off the series that we're in on the book of Revelation. If you didn't, it's a great message. Go back and listen to that and then come back to this conversation. I think that'll be helpful. But Chris, there's something I think we need to address right off the bat that you talk about in your message is that you always need to know the ending of a movie or even sporting events, which is crazy to me. Like, I get the movie thing, but even sporting events, like, you have to know how it's going to end before you watch it. That's true?
It's pretty annoying to just know that about me, isn't it? It drives my friends and my wife and family crazy. I'm like that.
Yeah, your
pretty
poor
much
wife.
all the time.
Wow.
It's really hard. So the Cubs are an exception.
Okay,
I will watch a Cubs game.
Wondering. Yes.
Yeah. So, but I've died with Cubs losses many, many times. So maybe that's part of it. That's part of the problem.
Because of the
Cubs are generally losers, and I'm just tired of that. So
that was my big question, actually, because I think a lot of us have seen the video clip of you watching the Cubs win the World Series, which I'm assuming was in real time. You didn't know the end as that was happening.
No,
so
that's right.
Were you just like a nervous, anxious wreck as that was happening?
Oh wow, a nervous wreck, and that was actually I was in a hotel and. With other people from our church at a conference, and everyone left me alone in a little area by myself because I was nitroglycerin. I could have gone either way on that one. So that was at any rate. So I'm just I don't like anxiety, I guess. There you go. And I'm just like, I'd rather know the end from the beginning.
Yeah. I can appreciate that. The older that I get, right? All right. Well, a sharp turn from talking about the Cubs, but you gave us this great overview of a little bit of how we can read the book of Revelation, how not to read it, and some of that kind of stuff. And one of the things that you centered on at the beginning was the type of literature that we're reading. And you talked about how it's apocalyptic literature, or we're referring to it throughout this series as like kind of a fantasy genre, right?
Right. Yeah, we're changing it because, like I said Sunday, if we were in a New Testament department, we wouldn't call it fantasy genre. We'd call it apocalyptic. But when you say the word apocalyptic in our world, everyone thinks it's all about just end-time destruction of humanity and all that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And that's not actually, as I was trying to explain, what the word apocalypse means. Yeah. It means an unveiling. And so because our culture doesn't hear the word as unveiling, we're just going to pun and say it's fantasy literature, even though that's technically not really a term. Yeah,
that's helpful. You talked about how it involves cosmic battles and vivid symbols, and it makes all that just weird, right? Like
totally.
It's hard
Which
to read
is why I love the book. I just love the book. I mean, to me, that it's so different from the rest of the New Testament, and it just is fascinating as all get out. The whole background behind apocalyptic literature. I mean, different kinds of, like I said in the message, this is Second Temple Judaism before Christ. There were a bunch of people that just loved God and were Hebrew Bible nerds. And they would meditate on different kinds of passages in the Hebrew Bible and then write stuff that's like, what? And so the apocalyptic genre is, it's 200, 300, 400 years old. It came and went. After first century AD, it kind of just disappeared.
Yeah.
But so we don't have a lot of that literature, so let's go.
Yeah.
It's cool stuff. I love it. Yeah.
So one of the things I wonder if some of us are wondering as we hear about that, and I don't know that I'm going to frame this question very well, but I think you'll know what I'm getting at, is if we view Revelation in this way as this kind of genre, there's a lot of symbolism and that kind of thing. Does that influence like whether we see what's happening in this book as literal? Like, when we read the stories of Jesus, like, of course, those are literal things that happened in the course of history. What do we do with that in Revelation, with whether to read it literally or not literally? Talk to us about that.
Yeah, so the use of symbols and images is an extremely great way to communicate. If I said the White House just declared war on China, no one would believe that a white building. Actually, we all understand the image behind White House means that's the executive branch, that's the president. But we use figurative language like White House all the time. And it doesn't mean that we're less literal. It's just another way. We all would know it's, oh my gosh, we're at war. See, but I use an image to convey that. So just because the images are used doesn't mean there's not something real behind it.
Sure.
So that the word literal can get in our way. No one that studies Revelation, no matter what view you hold, would believe that the 6 horses in chapter 6 could run in the Kentucky Derby. Nobody believes that. There are horses there. There are 4 horses, but at any rate, so there you go. So those images are all over, everywhere in the book of Revelation. They're everywhere. Apocalyptic literature. It's apocalyptic literature. So don't try to make apocalyptic literature something that it's not. Yeah. So it uses images and symbols. So let's go for it. So the issue is, what does that mean? So you did have different people debate about what the term White House means or something like that. That's what you're dealing with the interpretation of Revelation.
That's good.
That's good. Chris, one of the things that you kind of hinted at on Sunday was that you used to view Revelation as a book mainly geared towards like decoding the future in times, but that you don't view it that way anymore. So tell us more about how you changed your mind, what that journey was like for you.
Yeah, thank you. That's a good question. And I hope, and what I talked about, I referred to one of my past mentors, John Walford, and man, I don't want anything that I said to sound bad about him. He passed away years ago. He's a great man, and I went to Dallas Theological Seminary in the late 70s and early 80s, and I just thank God for that school. I learned so much there. It was a wonderful, wonderful place. And actually, it may surprise some people who know a bit about Dallas. I learned this idea of really kind of having an open hand towards the whole idea of eschatology, really from Dallas, because there were people who graduated from there that got really hardened in their views, and they weren't really welcome around Dallas. I mean, because the profs at Dallas were smart enough to know that really great people can disagree about this book and that kind of thing. So that attitude of having an open hand and humility, I actually picked up from people like John Walford and Ryrie and other people like that. So I really, my time there was great. So the migration for me partly has to do with the fact that there were profs at Dallas that no longer hold the views that Dallas holds. One of them is Charles Yu's mentor, Bruce Waltke, and I really had great respect for Bruce. Everybody at Dallas had great respect for Bruce. So, and there's other profs that our listeners wouldn't know. But, I was kind of watching that. Mostly this wasn't preoccupying my life or my time. I'm mostly pastoring churches and, just trying to do ministry and stuff like that. But the whole idea of eschatology is a sticky wicket. I mean, there's all kinds of, we need to have open hands. And as long as we're just driven back to the biblical text and really trying to wrestle with the biblical text, what the Bible is actually saying, that's like the biggest things. So something happened to me in 2015 where I took a trip. Denver Seminary sponsored a trip to tour Turkey, where the 7 churches are. So I went on this trip, and there was an archaeologist on the trip, and walking through Pergamum and walking through Laodicea and stuff like that. It was like really powerful. And being able to get my feet on the ground and everything, and then look at texts again and thinking, whoa. So I was really driven back towards the text and thinking, wow, if our interpretation of Revelation, if it wouldn't make sense for those 7 churches, like, wow, because it was written to those 7 churches. And so that really that was part of my journey too. So I started to kind of unloosen my grip on some of the views that I held. And then, I don't know, you can cut me off if I'm talking too much, but then within our own denomination and our own Evangelical Free Church of America denomination, there was part of the statement of faith was that we believed in a premillennial return of Christ. And that means that Christ would come back before the literal 1,000-year reign that he would have on the earth. And our denomination, through a process of, a decade or so, really felt like that was too narrow and that should really be changed to the glorious return of Jesus Christ. Again, this was lots of meetings, and it took a decade to make that change, but I was a part of that whole transition, and I appreciated the wisdom of our denomination. So that's really what most people should really agree, that Jesus is coming back. That's part of the gospel.
Yeah.
So like exactly when and how, that gets into all kinds of areas where people can disagree and should be able to disagree and disagree agreeably on it. And so all of those things led me to rethink some of the things that I've taught about the apocalypse. And I have more commentaries on the apocalypse than any other book, easily.
Yeah.
And spent more time in it than any other book. My master's thesis was on it, so yeah, it's just
I
a
didn't know
wrestling.
that. That's cool.
Yeah.
There's a lot there to unpack from what you just said, but I even in you talking about how our denomination made that change. I mean, again, that could be a question that people are wondering, like, what if we disagree with something that is talked about on a Sunday? Like, we actually hold a different view of the end times or of the book or that sort of thing. But what our denomination and what you're saying is like, look, there's an openness and a humility to this. It sounds like, right? Like we can come at this in different ways, and that's okay. Is there anything more you want to say about that?
I don't know what your view is. I don't know what Tiffany. I mean, I feel like
I know what my view is.
Yeah, there you go. I think that's the idea of the statement of faith. We believe in the glorious return of Jesus Christ. Yeah. So that's the main thing. And everybody's absolutely welcome. And it's that rigidity that we would reject and that kind of a thing. We have open. This is apocalyptic literature, you guys. Good luck.
Yeah, totally. That's right.
Yeah, like what in the world is going on there? It was a mystery to the church fathers. It's a mystery to the reformers. It should be a mystery to, like what in the world? So, if I change my view in 5 years, hey, there you go.
Nobody should be surprised. Yeah, that's
there you
right.
go.
Yeah.
So, but we're not changing our view about the most important things. That obedience to Jesus. The book is about obedience to Jesus.
Yeah, that's right.
That's not really up for grabs here.
Yeah.
And how we can be dissident disciples in the world. Babylon is very powerful. How we can see the influence of Babylon everywhere around us, and people. The way I used to teach, I taught that also. So that's really the driving force behind the book, and my friends at Dallas would believe that and all that. Yeah.
When I go back to one other thing you said, so you said it was 2015 that you took this trip to Turkey. So if I'm understanding you correctly, that was a pivotal moment for even how you interpret and understand the book of Revelation. That was only 10 years ago.
Yes, that's right.
And that was something that kind of was a catalyst for seeing things in a different light and all of that. I've been sitting in on the teaching team meetings about what your first message would be about, and I don't think that I even realized that it was as recently as 10 years ago that a trip like that was a catalyst for this happening, which I think just speaks volumes. So like you're still learning, you're still changing your mind about things. And I actually really appreciate that about what you just shared.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't changed my mind about the fact that God speaks through His Word and the Bible's inerrant and all that. I mean, it's my love for the Bible has increased, I think, over the years. The issue is, and I learned this at Dallas, is it what the Bible is teaching? So that's where you can disagree and lots of arguments and stuff like that. But it's really about the Bible. This whole type of thing, eschatology, apocalyptic literature, it's just, yeah, people should be able to have a good conversation about, hey, I disagree with that because of this, that, and that. So, let's talk biblically about the whole thing. So, and I don't maybe want to get too far afield, but I mean, you take, most of the whole Bible is basically the Lord's going to come back. You don't really see two returns in the Bible. That's the emphasis, especially in the Old Testament, is on one return. And my theology that I had was making too much out of too few of verses. So I really want the majority of the biblical canon to really influence my decision, not just one verse here and one verse there. Yeah.
Are there specific, even as you had that moment 10 years ago where you're starting to see things in a different light, like specific passages or things like that you've wrestled through that have kind of influenced how you've changed your mind about things as well?
Yeah, not really. I don't believe. I think it's just gradually. I don't know. It's hard to say. Not the best. Mostly, it's just dealing with the Bible, the narrative, the whole narrative of the Bible, from the beginning to the end, and that's my main thing. Yeah, and what we see. I mean, I've said this before. This is an overstatement, but Genesis 1, 2, and 3 is pretty much everything. The rest of it's just an appendix, And a lot of what's going on in Revelation has to do with Genesis 3:15 and what's going to happen to the serpent and all that kind of thing.
Yeah,
that's probably not a good answer.
As you've seen the book in a little bit different light and started to read it a little bit differently, I'm putting you on the spot here, but are there things that have opened up to you that you didn't see before, or things that God has shown you just about the beauty of this book or His work in the world that in reading it in a different way has kind of come to light?
Yeah, I think every time I read the Apocalypse, these are very powerful scenes and images and symbols, and they do grip you in different ways. And as we're doing this podcast, I'm working through chapter 12 about the Great War in heaven and the dragon and the woman, and very powerful. I mean, very powerful. So for the listeners, one of the major themes in the Apocalypse is the fact that the church suffered persecution, and there were martyrs. People were giving their lives over for the sake of the gospel and for Jesus. And the martyrs and what's happening to them is it's a huge theme in the Apocalypse. And when he's addressing these 7 churches, he's chastising them sometimes, he's complimenting them sometimes, but he doesn't want people to get away from their view about who Christ was. Most of Rome never heard of Jesus or Christianity or anything like that. They were very much in the minority, a very tiny group of people. But he wanted them to live as dissident disciples, as people who were resistant to the dominant culture around them, even if it cost them their life. And that is maybe something that we just pass over today, but this was a real deal for them. And I feel like maybe I'm in chapter 12 now, so I'm just thinking about that more and more. That is, where is it? So the dragon represents the power of death and stuff like that. So where is it where that power of death is the most powerful thing, and it influences us, and we make all kinds of decisions based upon we don't want to die and stuff like that. And he's just like, that's the dragon. And yeah, the dragon actually is going to be slain and defeated by this lamb that was slain. Mm-hmm. Like, what is that? It's reverse power kind of a thing. Dragon defeated by the blood of a slain lamb. I mean, like, what is that? So it's you little people that have no voice at all. Yeah, by the power of the Spirit, you will overturn the influence of this big empire. That's kind of what happened.
Yeah. And I think that actually, I think that can also be, like, it's so amazing, like, powerful to read, but it also, I think, can be a challenge for us living in our day and age, because many of us aren't, some of us have power, right? We don't feel disempowered. We don't feel, for many of us, that, maybe the state is out to get us, if you will. And so how would you encourage us over these next 11 weeks to kind of, what kinds of things to be thinking about? Or how would you encourage us to read with that lens?
Yeah, that's a good question. I feel like one of the problems with the apocalypse and the reading of it is people get lost on things like end times and stuff like that, which is a mistake. It's about Jesus. And if the book doesn't cause you to fall back in love with Jesus and who Jesus is and what he is about, that's a problem. So whatever we can do as we read through the apocalypse, is it really drawing us to who he is? And, and the big image of Jesus is this lamb, but it's slain lamb. Like, what is that, So, he does come back with great power in chapter 19 and things like that. But the main image is this slain lamb. And I would say, are we falling in love with Jesus? Jesus is counterculture. Babylon is the dominant culture. And are we falling back in love with Jesus? Are we able to resist the powerful lure of the culture that we live in? Do we resist the culture and all that kind of thing? That's where we should go in terms of reading the apocalypse. And really, anybody that holds kind of any particular eschatological view should go, oh, well, yes. That's what we should agree on.
Ground.
Yeah, that's common ground.
That's
yeah.
good.
Mm-hmm.
All right, I'm going to ask you to, not that you haven't had it on the whole time, but put on your pastor hat specifically for this question. And Chris, why the book of Revelation for Black Hawk Church, and why right now? Like, what do you hope and pray that our people, we at this table, will get out of this series as we dig into the book of Revelation over the next 11 weeks?
Yeah, well, thanks for thinking that I have something to do with what we preach next and everything.
Oh, come on.
That used to be my job, but I don't have that anymore. So, Charles and Matt are the leaders of the direction where we go. I'd be happy to do Revelation any time of the year, but I can't speak for them. But again, it's a large book. It's super fascinating. And I feel like it gives us an opportunity to, again, think seriously about the world in which we live. And are we being followers of the Lamb? Am I being obedient to the Lamb? And it's very popular not to be obedient to the Lamb in our world today. Mm. And that's the biggest issue. So in different places, this book is not, as I said when I preached, it's not about the individual. A lot of Paul's literature is about my sin, my decision. This is not. The apocalypse is about corporate things. It's about systemic things. So there's not a lot of individual kind of things. Even when you look at the letters to the churches, it's addressed to the corporate body of the church. So I guess that's a warning for us too as a church. Do people see us as a church? Are we being resistant to the dominant culture of our day? How are we being resistant to the dominant culture? And are we being obedient to the Lamb? And that's a message that should be preached at any year and any time. So that's going to be the emphasis of where we're going in the series.
That's great. I know for some people, this might be kind of a newer reading for them. And so they might be interested in kind of learning more beyond the Sunday sermon. So I'd be curious if you have any recommendations for people who are wanting to kind of go a little deeper. What maybe is there a commentary you would recommend, or a book, podcast?
Yeah, Gorman's book, Michael Gorman. We have that in our resource section. How to read Revelation. I think that would be really, really helpful for people. And then, my friend Mackie, that guy. So the Bible Project, you can. He has a whole thing on about how to read apocalyptic literature. So that would be good. Mm-hmm. Then he has 2 7-minute segments on the apocalypse. So it took him 2 segments. He doesn't do books in usually 2 segments, but it's so big. So I would recommend that for folks right away. Yeah. And then commentaries. There's a little thin one by Dave Mathewson, who is one of my tour guides on Denver Seminary. That's cool. So that's a companion to Revelation. That's readable. It's
super readable, thin, actually.
And everything like that. Mm-hmm. If people want to get into larger works, that's a different, I can recommend those too if you want me to. But
maybe one. Maybe is there 1 or 2? Because we do have some people who like to go deep dive.
Yeah. If maybe Greg Beals, but I don't know. It's like 1,200 pages or something. I don't know. Nobody's going to really get that.
There's 4 of you that are going to do that.
Like
that. Totally, yeah.
But, maybe that might be Grant Osborne. Okay. I know Grant. So Grant holds a premillennial view, and then Greg holds an amillennial view. So those are 2 different views.
That's great.
But they're really kind. They like each other, and they're good talking back and forth.
Awesome. That's great. Mm-hmm.
So what you're saying is it sounds like we have our work cut out for us as we're reading the book of Revelation. It's apocalyptic literature, so it's weird. We're not always going to be able to relate to these marginalized, martyred people who are being persecuted, and it's talking corporately rather than individualistically. All these different things that, we're going to have to do the hard work of reading this well and intentionally and all of those things. But I'm excited to go on this journey together. So, Chris, any final words of encouragement to someone that's maybe never read the book before or is jumping into this with us?
Yeah, read the book.
Read it.
Stop watching podcasts.
Stop. Not this podcast.
Keep listening to this
podcast.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Yeah. But read. Don't read secondary literature. Read primary literature. Yeah. And if you read the text and you go, "Oh, this is easy to understand," nobody's going to say that. So then you'll get why it's a difficult book.
Yeah. And even I was thinking, even as you read through it, write the questions that you have, right? Send them to us at podcast@blackhawkchurch.org. We can even answer some of these as we go on. But dig in, right? It's nothing to be afraid of.
And I would say the whole idea of, so obedience to Jesus frames the book, chapter 1, chapter 22. So I would say as you're reading through it, just stop and say, ooh, my gosh, that was what in the world? But how is my reading causing me to be more conscious of my steps toward obedience to Jesus? He is the Lord of Lords and King of Kings, and every knee will bow. So don't be deceived by his power, and this is his world. And in the dragon's world, it's his world. So how am I? The empty tomb on Easter, bam. And every tomb will be empty one day, and everyone will stand and be judged. And you want to be on the Lamb's team. Yeah. Trust me.
Yeah, it's good. It's good.
good.
Praise God. That's a good note to end on. It seems a little crazy to always read about the end of every movie or sporting event, but in this case, it's helpful, right? Knowing and remembering the end, that Jesus is victorious and he wins in the end. So appreciate you speaking about it.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah. All right, you guys. Well, that's been a great conversation with Pastor Chris and with Pastor Tiffany. Until next time, have a great week.